Hi, Ali from Ali Stitch Fingers here. Today I'm going to show you how to make the ultimate storage bag, pouch, case. And basically it's got storage for all, well I'm using it for English paper piecing, but you can use it for whatever you want. We've got plenty of zip pockets to store different components. As you can see, I do actually use mine. I've got loads of bits of pieces at the back. So let's get straight on with it because it could be a lengthy one. I have done some of the things that are going to be repeated. I have made one of the zipper pockets just to save a little bit of time. But first of all, I'm going to start off with said zipper pockets. So I've got some zip here ready. And first of all, I'm going to take my vinyl pieces. These are cut to the instructions. And I'm going to put my stitch length on a 2.5. I have got a cream thread on, and just to save speed I'm going to keep that on. Now what I'm going to do is stitch the zip face up on top of the vinyl, and I'm doing two of them because there is actually a piece on the front and on the back. So I'm just stitching the zip to the top. While I'm sewing, I'll tell you what I've done to the fabric. So I fused the stiff interfacing to the back of one of the inner pieces. And then I stitched the fuser web to the back of the lining of the inner pieces, whichever you want, because they end up seeing both sides. So it doesn't really matter, you could have both fabrics the same. I'm using a fabric by Henry Glass, which is called Irish Blessing. So I'm just going to cut that off. I'm going to cut the zip, but I am using some old scissors, because on these two parts I've got the fancy zips for the... Oh, I'm going to use fancy zips on some of them actually. So I'm going to keep the fancy zips for the other sides of these. So I'm going to turn it around. And I'm going to stitch these onto the other ends, exactly the same, face up, making sure I don't get those bobbin, well, the zip pulls caught. So once I'd stuck the fusible interface into one side, I peeled the backing off the fuser web, and that leaves that, so it's sticky. I put it onto the opposite side, so you end up with a double-sided fabric basically, which is nice and stiff. So that's all prepared then for these zips to go on. So I'm just stitching straight across the top. The needle won't like the zip pull, so just make sure you move it out of the way, or stick it out of the way if you like. Oops, my thread's gone. Always the case as soon as I start filming. Come on. I can see it. Get this re-threaded back up. I've got my lights off so it's a little bit easier for you to see, which makes it difficult for me. I'll just go over that bit again. Back on track. So just to recap, you should have now have two pieces of fabric that are double-sided, two pieces, or you'll have four pieces of vinyl with the zips on top of the vinyl. Then take the pieces that the zip covers and fold them in half and press along the length. So these are 7 inches by 1, I think, whatever it tells you anyway. Now the raw edges on this we're going to place to the edge of the zip. So you're placing it directly on top. and to the edge. If you turn it over, you can see the stitching line that you had before. And just stitch along that same stitching line. I'm hoping I've got it. So stitching directly on top. The next one, take the raw edge, place it to the edge of the zip, and make sure that zip pull moves out of the way. The normal ones aren't too bad, but the rainbow ones can be quite large, some of them, especially the frog ones. They've got quite long legs. So I'll take that out and then I'll show you what we've got. So you've got your vinyl there with your zip sandwiched in between the fabric. So I'm going to turn around and do the other side. So raw edge of the fabric to the raw edge of the zip tape. Sandwiching that zip in between. So this is not the fabric that comes in the kit. I've done it as a neutral one because I wanted to have another one myself. And I've got 2 or 3 of the other ones now with making up the kits for samples. So I'm just lining it up. There we go. Now I'm going to up the stitch length to about 3. I'm going to cut the zip flat or flush with the edge of the vinyl. Oops, can't see it. So now what you should have is those looking like that. Now what you're going to do is flip the zip to the opposite side, folding that fabric back and fold so you can see the zip teeth, just like that. Now we're going to stitch along the edge and along the top edge of that as well. So if you want to put a normal foot on, you can, but I find it easy to do it with the zip foot still on. So just holding it flat, go right along the edge. I'm going to turn it around to do the opposite edge because the zip, rather than change the needle to the opposite side of the zip, or rather the zip foot. It just looks really neat if you stitch down both sides. So you can see now it's stitched nice and flat. Repeat on all the other 3. I'm trying to do it really quick, but you take your time at home. And you can pause the tutorial. So when you've got a full one done, that's what it should look like. I'm going to repeat on this one and then we're ready to assemble the inner pockets. The kits, if you bought the kit, come with pre-made binding. I wanted a matching binding, so I made my own, but I'm rather wishing that I hadn't now, because after doing it I found it neater to do the pre-bought ones that are provided in the kit. But I will show you it anyway, and it shows you a different way to do it if you want to do it that way. It does need to be biased because it is rounded. So just do the 2 edges nearest to the zip. By stitching down this one, it stops the fabric getting caught in the zip pull, which is always a bonus. Last one. and I can take this zipper foot off. Right, so that's all the pockets done. So you'll have 4 of those. I've already done one. Just going to change my foot. I am using a walking foot. Now what we need to do is put one of these each side of that fabric. So you can do it singularly, which is probably the best way to do it. And it is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to make my stitch length even bigger. And I'm just going to centre this. Probably would have been better off leaving the zipper foot on actually. I'll see if I can do it by moving the zip pull. If it's a little bigger as mine is, you can always trim it down before you put the binding on, which is absolutely fine. So I've gone along the top, just going down the side, just keeping it all nice and level as you go. Don't worry if it does go over the edge slightly, we are going to trim it down. If you have trouble with stitching this and you have a Teflon foot, use a Teflon foot. Walking foot definitely helps. But I'm just going to trim that off because I have sewn it a little bit down and I can see that I've got a little bit now hanging over the edge, so it would have been right if I'd have left it as it was. So I'm going to quickly just unpick that and move it up to the top. So take heed from what I've just done and don't try and rectify it in one go. It's another reason for using a big stitch. Then if it's not right, you can easily unpick it like this without having to unpick tiny stitches, because you are going to go over it with your binding, which will be on a smaller stitch length, so it's not a problem, don't worry about that. So I will start it right on the very edge, as it should have been. I was being clever. Sorry about all the clanging, it's the zip pulls. So I will move it right up to the edge and I will put my zip foot back on, so don't change your zip foot. Luckily they're quite quick with Baninas to change the zip, the feet. There we go. So I'll put it right on the edge. Another big stitch length again. If you're a clipper or a pinner, don't pin it because it is vinyl, but clip it and it will probably make it a little bit easier to do. I'm just trying to cut corners and it doesn't always pay. See, I should have listened to my own instructions. It fits perfectly. When I get to the top, I'm just going to turn that corner, pull it taut. Now I have got a little bit left over at this side, but I'm not going to trim anything off till I put the other side on. Go down the opposite side. So that's one side done, and that's what it looks like. I'm going to take the other piece and stitch that to the opposite side. So just be wary of those zip pulls. You may be worth taping them down if you've got any of those fancy ones on. And we're just going to do exactly the same on the other side. Yes, if you was careful, you could have stitched them both at the same time. Would I advise it? No, I wouldn't. I would advise you to do it in 2 pieces like I'm doing here, just to make sure. The zips are all right to be stitched over. They are nylon zippers, so that's absolutely fine. Right, so I'm coming up to one with the big zip pulls on, so I'm being very careful. It's just in case anybody is using the fancy zip pulls. Just be very careful. And then down the last side. So that is one of the pockets done, and that will actually make 4 pockets. So I'm going to put my stitch length down to a normal 2.5. So now what I need to do is just trim all the way around there. Don't use your best scissors for this. I would trim it as close to the stitches as you can. About 1/8 of an inch or up to 1/4 of an inch. But we are going to put the binding on and stitch that at about 1/4 of an inch. So when you get to the top, we're just rounding it off, just to make it easier to put those the binding on. If you have it square, you have to miter the corners, and it can be quite bulky. So that's why I've rounded them. So just round that corner nicely, and the last one, there we go. So that's all the corners rounded, and we have the vinyl on both sides now. So I'm going to take the binding. So this is how I've done it. I've actually cut a 2-inch strip and folded it down the length. I've done it on the bias, and then I've stitched them together and folded it down the length. I don't really enjoy doing it this way, so I wouldn't do it again on something like this. For quilts and everything else, yeah, not a problem. But for something like this, I think it's better done the other way. So I'm going to start on one side and part of the way up. I'm going to leave this zipper foot on just in case while I've got this stitched on, and then I'll change to the 1/4 of an inch foot. So I'm stitching, I'd say a scant 1/4 of an inch. Just take it steady. I do like to use a stiletto when I'm doing binding. Just helps keep everything in place. When you get to the curves, so just take it slowly, make sure I ain't got any zip pulls underneath. Slow your machine right down and go around that curve as gently as you can. Going across the top, if you need to move any zip pulls, do so they're not getting in your way. Stitch across the top. And around the other corner, gently does it. Down the long straight bit. Again, I have got a walking foot on. Teflon foot mail, because it is vinyl. And up to the curves again. So I'm just moving these zip pulls. Actually, I'm going to leave them at that side for now, and then I'll move them over when I've got space to do so they'll not get in my way. Slowly round the corners. Across the top. Now I'm going to move the zip pulls. Round the last corner. Every single curve I've come to, I've managed to get a seam on it. And go about an inch, well, half an inch to an inch past where you started. Trim off the excess, and we're going to push all this to the other side. Now, on your curves, you may need to trim some of the bulk off down to about 1/4 inch, just to make sure it's going to cover those stitches. I mean, you may have to do it on the straight bit, just start and see how you go on. You can tell when you start to turn it, so you just push it to the top, and if it comes over like that, then you should be okay. Right, so I'm going to top stitch now. I'm going to take this zipper foot off, and I'm going to top stitch with a little bit bigger stitch. So I've got about 2.8. Using my stiletto to help me along. So I'm just folding the binding to the top and covering up the stitches that you can see. Round the curves gently. Along the top. This is the longest part of the project actually. Just move these zip pulls out of the way. Can I get it? Not quite. Let's see if I can get past it. Round the curve. Down the straight bit. Yeah, I much prefer the other way of doing the binding to this. So just come in up to another curve. Actually, I've come to where I started, so I'm just going to make sure that the fabric overlaps and looks nice and neat on there. Around the curve. Move that zip pull out of the way. I'll actually move up a little bit and then I will move them out of the way. This one and the underneath one. There we go. Moved it, not quite. Up you go. There we go. So just doing the last corner. Right, so now what I recommend that you do is fold it in half and put a clip on the halfway fold on both of the edges and one in the centre, and that'll just give it a little bit of memory for it to hold there. So that is both of mine done, and I will put those to the side now while I get the other bits done. So the next thing we're going to do is the little magnet piece here. So I'm going to pop the magnet inside, and I'm just going to stitch all the way around the square. Don't have to finish the edges because it's going the inside of the fabric. So it's basically just going around the square. I'm going to go around a couple of times just to make sure it doesn't come out. The magnet just moves out of the way. So that is my little case with my magnet in. We're going to make the thimble pocket now. So basically I've folded that in half. I'm going to stitch down both sides and across the bottom, but I'm going to leave a little turning gap along the bottom edge. Only a little one, but it is only a little pocket. So that's the turning gap left. I mean, I'm calling it a thimble pocket. You don't have to use it for a thimble, obviously. I'm just going to cut the corners, reducing bulk. Turn that through to the right side. If you want to put a pocket on the back of the bag, we can do that now as well. Let's get some tweezers to help me do this. I have got problems with my hands, so it can be quite difficult to do. There we go, push that through. I'm going to iron it flat, and then that is my little pocket done. So we're going to do exactly the same with the bigger pocket, leaving a turning gap on the bottom. The fabric's not directional, so it doesn't really matter. So that's my little pocket. I'm going to give that a quick press. Just going to make sure that I've poked all the corners out nicely. That's fine. I'm going to make a little pleat on the bottom, just like that. Just fold a little bit in and stitch across it. That will hold it. So it's just so that the pocket has got a little bit of a an opening in it for the thimble to go in. Otherwise it'll be too flat and you'll not fit it in. So that makes it a little bit rounded, as you can see. So now for the outer pocket. Exactly the same, leaving a turning gap on one bottom piece. Stitch all the way around. Again, trim your corners. Just make sure you don't trim those stitches. Turn it through to the right side and give it a press. Don't know what's happened to my chopstick. I usually have a chopstick here. I'll use my scissors. They're not very pointed, so I'll just use these scissors. Be very careful if you do this. You don't want to poke a hole in your fabric. But on the other side, you do want a nice crisp pocket. There we go. the pocket done. Give that a quick press. Right, so now we're going to do the outer case. So these are the little bits that we need. On the outer case, it tells you to interface the outer section, which I have done, and I've just noticed that it's coming undone a little bit at the end. So it does need to be really well fused. Last thing you want is the interfacing coming away from your fabric, especially if it's all built up. So try and do it more than necessary if you're at all worried. So you've got your outer piece fused, then you've got your wadding, and then you have the lining. Now on the lining, this is where we're going to put all the pockets and things. So I need to get a pen. Oh yeah, I've got one here. And a ruler. And I tell you in the instructions where to mark. So we want to section it off into the pieces. So that makes the front same at the back. So the middle bit is the spine. If you wanted to do any embroidery on the spine, I actually embroidered EPP on mine. Now's the time to do it. But you can see I've got those lines on there. So this section is going to be my back, and this is where I'm going to place my patch pocket. So I'm just going to place that centrally and stitch all the way around the edges, apart from the top, and that is going to be just for putting whatever I want in. So I'm going to stitch right at the very edge, and then again I'm going to stitch another row about 1/4 of an inch inside this. I just like that look. I mean, I am trying to do this quick for the length of the video, but you take your time and really enjoy doing it. So that's the patch pocket. So now we're going to section off for the elastics, which is going to hold the tools. I've got my zip for the outer. Where's my elastic gone? Put everything here ready, and it has disappeared. I'll put it on here. No. Excuse me a moment. No idea where that... Oh, I found it. Always on the floor. So normally I would change thread colour to black for this, but just for speed, I'm just going to do it in the cream. I will make it neat. I'm just going to fold over about 1 centimetre at the beginning, and wherever I tell you to place it, I do tell you to mark your fabric. I'm just going to do it freehand. Place that down and stitch across the elastic. I like to do it a couple of times just for strength. Actually, I'm going to move it a little bit further down than that. You don't want your tools poking out of the top of your bag. So this is where you need to decide how big you want your sections. It depends what tools you've got, but you want to raise a little bit up, so you've got quite a big tool, so that there's a little bit hooked, so it's not going to stretch too much, but you need it to stretch enough so it's holding your tools in. But you're going to decide how big you want your gaps. So I'm going to do quite a big one to start with, because that could be a rotary cutter. And obviously if you want little glue sticks or pencils or markers, you don't want those to be very big. So it's up to you. Just make sure you keep them in the right line. I do tell you to draw a line, so you know they're all going to be in line. Just move it up each time. You may have specific tools. If you want to put the threads in, remember that the threads might need a little bit more elastic. I'm just going to do the last one. Leave a little bit extra, turn it under about 1 centimetre again, and do your last one. You can see where the fold's going to be by the mark you put on there. Right, so then I will go back afterwards and trim all those threads off, but that's going to give me my sections. Now you want a piece about 2 inches of elastic, and we're going to fold in the ends to meet in the middle. So I've got a little loop. Fold that flat, and I'm going to stitch this in, and I do tell you again in the instructions where that needs to go, and it's round about where I'm placing it. I'm doing it by eye. That is for your little embroidery scissors to go. So stitch down each side. So you can see that's on there, your scissors just go in there like that. Now we need to put the magnet and the little thimble pocket. So again, it tells you in the instructions where they need to go. I'm just going to put them by eye. The little thimble pocket, you just stitch around the 3 sides like you did on the patch pocket on the back. And now for this one, you've got your little square where you stitched, so turn this over, place it on the back between the thimble pocket and the little scissors, place it straight, and then just stitch over the stitches that you've previously sewn, the ones that holds the magnet in. That way you'll just have a square stitched on the other side. You could always put something over it if you didn't want to just see those stitches, but it leaves you like a marker as to where you need to put your needles. Because obviously being a magnet, that will hold your needles in place for you. There we go. So that is your magnet on the back. So that is the interior of your piece made. So now we're going to take the outer, we're going to lay that right side down, take the wadding, lay that on top, and we're going to stitch using a large stitch all the way around the sides, just to hold it all in place. Put my stitch length up. I'm just going to trim down the wadding. It's only slightly different size, but it just helps with keeping it all nice and neat. Right, so now what we're going to do is put the zipper foot back on. We're going to do the zip closure on this. So I'll just swap that over. Now the zipper I've got is bigger. You need to cut it down. But before we do that, I need to measure it. I think I did it 7.5. Let me just have a look at my instructions. Where is it? Mark the zip at 7 3/4. Right, so 7 3/4 is here. Not sure I can see that, but pull the zipper down. I can just about see it. So we pull the zipper down, and at 7 3/4 where the mark is, we're going to fold the zip to the side, and we're going to stitch along there, and that's going to hold that zipper in place. So you're just folding it back and stitching across there. Do the same at the other side. Just check that I've got the right size. Yep. So lay it down flat, fold the zipper so they are turning at the same part. Is that right? That there. Yep. And then stitch. I'm not cutting it off just yet, just in case. So you should have your zipper looking like that. Now we're going to take the outer and we're going to place the zip with the zip pull face down. So you're going to place it centrally in there. So you want it about 1/2 inch from the top and 1/2 inch from the bottom. You can stitch over the zip teeth. Turn my stitch length down again. So stitch straight down to the bottom. So you can see we've got 1/2 inch from the top, 1/2 inch from the bottom. Now we're going to hold that zip, place it to the other side. Again, right sides together, making sure that the tops are aligned on the front and the back. And we're going to stitch in place on that side. Then we can open the zip up. Just keep it fastened so I can make sure that I'm stitching them at the right place. I don't want a lopsided front. So before I unzip it, I will show you what it looks like. Just make sure that the top is level as well. Take that out. So you should have a loop with the zip in between. So now unzip, and it does come apart because it's an open and zip, and it will look like that. Now what you're going to do is take the inner lining, place that over the top, and we're going to stitch from the bottom in the middle all the way around the edge fact, I'm going to do it from this side so that I can see where I stitched before for the zip. So we're going to stitch from the bottom here all the way around the edge. Yep, that side. So just make sure you can clip it. I don't for speed, sorry. You need to leave a turning gap. I would recommend clipping it. If I was just doing this and not doing a tutorial, I would clip it definitely to make sure it's all going to line up nice and neat. But by doing it from the back, I can see the stitches on the zip, so I know exactly where to sew. Across the top all the way, making sure it's all nice and level. Same on the opposite side, just make sure it's all nice and level. Stitched where you stitched for the zip. Now you've got the large chunky part of the zip here, so just go steady when you get to this corner. It will go nicely. Just holding that side up. Now don't forget to leave your turning gap. I'm going to leave a reasonably sized one. Get your old scissors and clip off the zip ends. So basically, if you've got loads of zips that are odd sizes, you can use things like use them for things like this. Just trimming the corners to remove some bulk, and now turn it through. It is quite stiff because the interfacing is stiff, but you're only turning it through once, so it's not a problem. Just take your time. You can always give it a press when you've got it turned through. And we've more or less finished. And it is a very, very handy case. I can see me having quite a few of these with all different projects in. Use your favourite fabrics so you want to be using them. Gosh, come on. So put your hand inside and just poke all those corners out. Especially where the zip is. There we go. Last corner to poke out. Well, last two corners rather. There we go. Right, so now what I like to do is give it a good press and then stitch all the way around the case. Stand up to give it a press. I've only got my little iron on, but should be enough for this. So if you've got a nice big steam iron, I would use that, but be careful of your elastic. You don't want to be going over your elastic too much. It can stretch it out a little bit. Where you turned it, tuck the seams in and give that a nice press. I am going to clip that to make sure it stays because I want to catch that together when I sew around the edges. So I'll get a couple of clips. could hand sew it closed if you want to, but if you clip it nicely and press it, you can get a good finish on that. So that's what it should look like now. So I'm just going to large stitch all the way around. I'm going to change my foot to my normal one. Large stitch. Just move that zip pull out of the way so I can get right into that corner. So I'm stitching on the very edge. It's about an eighth of an inch in, using my stiletto to keep it nice and neat. Just going over where the opening is. And it wasn't that big an opening anyway, but and the rest of it I'm just going to press it flat with my fingers. The side of the zips. Across the top, move that zip pull out of the way again. Down the side of the other zip. And then I'm just going to do another row of stitches 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of that one. That is the outer all done. Oh, I know what I forgot to do on this. On yours, you will have it in sections. That's why mine's just all in one. You needed to do a front to back and a central bit. I think it'll be fine. I'm going to have to mark those in myself, I think. So, let's see. I'm going to do it at the side of this. So this will make it fold. Just going to do it by eye, but I can see where that first marker was. So basically I'm sectioning it up myself, making my spine. Yours will be in the sections because I've told you to do it. I just haven't done it myself. Right, so let's so that's going to make that one fold to the front there. Again, I might have to put a little bit of some clips on just for memory. I'll put them on now. And then I need to do the same on the back, so I need to make sure it's the same size. Oh, what a wally. Oops, pinned it off. So that's there. Brought my thread as well. It's a good job I've got a threader on this because I wouldn't be able to see to thread it. Yeah, so you make your spine project into something by having your different sized sections. Because I'm rushing now. There we go. Making it panic a little bit, just a second. So try it, oops, turn that off. Right. All we've got to do now is put the inner sections in, and that's done in the same way as we've just done here. We're going to take the inner sections. I'm going to take the clips off. So how I do this, let me just get those threads off. If you place your inner where the fold is there, mine's obviously sewn, yours will just be folded, and just hold it, take your hand and put it inside. You should have the crease now that's in there. You're going to just stitch across that. I would clip it on both sides to make sure it stays where it should. I'm only going to put one in just to keep the video short, and if you wanted to make more of these pockets, you can do. But that is how your book comes about. So these make into 4 pockets, the other pocket makes another 4, and if you wanted to add another 4 you could do. This then folds up, put your zip down to the bottom. Oops. And then put that in there, and that is your case all done. So thanks for watching, have fun doing that, catch me on the next one, bye.